So we're going to utilize that and put him there so he can continue to do that, fully understanding that he's not developing to the next level. But if it's one of those where you feel like you're walking on glass, then that person's probably micromanaging you a little too much. And usually it's a licking ice cream cone where you want to see that person outdo you, because that means you worked yourself out of a job.
How do you find a balance between, getting involved in micromanaging? Because I had a boss, like when they hired me, she was like, I come up with the vision, you execute. I'm like, excuse me, but I needed a job, but that was a red flag. Do you have situations like that?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. I mean, what we like to work off of is mission and intent and key task. And so most commanders will say, hey, Dean, or the team, this is your mission, this is the intent I have, and these are the key tasks in which you need to execute. Great leaders I've seen, usually once they give that, you can rebuttal and have them specify like, hey, sir, what do you mean by this key task? Are you trying to achieve this or this exactly? And once you kind of have that conversation, but for the most part, they take a step back, because there's always multiple options to, achieve the objective and the end state you're trying to get to. But to your point, the micromanage stuff is, well, hey, sir, you gave me my mission, my key task, and my left and right limits. I'm well within them. And so if they're coming back and, don't get me wrong, there should be some course, correction from time to time. If you're going way out in right field, they're like, hey, bring it back in, you're going a little too far. That is perfectly fine. But if it's one of those where you feel like you're walking on glass, then that person's probably micromanaging you a little too much and needs to trust you and the process, because they hired you because they trusted you to get the job done. Well, have that trust. And by all means, let them fail. And if they fail, then that's when you come back and you give them all that, constructive criticism. And if they can take that, apply it to the next job you give them, and then you see them improving, now you're doing something great. But if you won't let them fail, they're probably not the right person for the job. Or if they did fail, there's probably a good reason, because it's not like they were malign against it, like I'm going to go out there and fail it purposely. But if they can take that constructive criticism, invest in that person, and I guarantee you in a year from now, they will be taking it to levels above what your expectations are. And I see that all the time with my team guys when I was there. We'd take a new guy and we would just let him fail and give him sometimes tasks that were almost impossible. We're just like, there's no way he's going to figure this out. And he would fail it like we all did, and, it'd be like, oh, and then you would see it in their eyes with the complete disappointment and that they didn't get it done. But they would take that constructive criticism. The next go around, we'd have something similar we're trying to do. And I would literally, whisper to my team sergeant and be like, wow, I don't think I could do it any better than that. Like, that is a million times better than I can do it. And now you're a leader. Now you literally took that person. And then before you know it, they'll start outrunning you. And you'd be like, hey, we need to get this, and this done. And he was like, yeah, I did that last week, sir. You're like, oh, okay. So they're like ahead of you. And that's when you just see them blossom. And you're like, wow, they got it.
You know how some leaders won't mentor their subordinates because they're scared that they might overtake them?
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's not like that in your community.
Not at all. Well, nothing's ever absolute. We have good leaders and bad leaders like everybody else, but all the great leaders out there, you want that person and it's built purposely that way. So, using myself as an example, I came in as a junior echo. So a communications sergeant. I had a senior echo who mentored me. Well, we had that conversation. Should have mentored me better, but I had a better senior echo. And so what you're doing is, training that person to replace you. And what better compliment in the world than, hey, who trained this guy? Like, well, I trained him up. Okay, cool, you can train people. Because what are you trying to do? You want to become a team sergeant one day, the senior enlisted advisor who oversees the ODA. And so as you work your way up, you're literally always kind of training your replacement. And you'll identify these people and be like, you will be a team sergeant one day because you have the work ethic and everything that is needed behind it. And so, yeah, usually it's a licking ice cream cone where you want to see that person outdo you, because that means you worked yourself out of a job. Hey, I don't need to be the senior anymore. I guess I need the next level responsibility. And then you move up.
Yeah.
And then, then obviously the fresh crop of new guys come in and the whole cycle starts again.
Yeah, in a way, the system is it's giving you the incentives to go up, right? Because there are some companies where there's a ceiling, and if you have a manager and then, if you go up and you're going to replace that manager's probably not going to want you to go up,
Yeah.
So that's I don't know. I think,
and there's pros and cons to it, but like everything in life, but yeah, there's absolutely an incentive and an expectation. Like if you're a junior for 3 or 4 years, you should be a senior anytime now. And if you haven't quite met those goals, that's when people will start to look at you funny on what's the problem. Then unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, because it's a performance-based organization, we don't have time for, I had these problems and this stuff came up. It's, can you perform in combat or can you not? And it's that simple. And if you're not meeting certain objectives and professionally developing yourself to be able to take these, then you probably just shouldn't be on an ODA anymore. And sometimes they're not.
I think there's a caveat, right, which you talked to me about earlier, about your buddy who stayed as an E7.
Yeah.
So, tell me about that.
Yeah, there's always an asterisk next to everything. But yeah, some people have very specific skill sets that can lock them into position because it is needed. My friend I was talking about, he was just a cyber guru. You could put him behind a computer and just work magic. However, he wasn't team sergeant material, and by that, once again, nothing against his character, but he wasn't built and made to be a team sergeant to lead a group of men into combat. But he had a very specific niche skill set which we required. So we're going to utilize that and put him there so he can continue to do that, fully understanding that he's not developing to the next level. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And sometimes, once again, that's sometimes what can bite us in the butt, though. Because, big military looks at it, Clint's not moving up. That must mean he's not great. Cut him loose. Like, no, he's not made for that specific position, but he is probably one of 10 people in the regiment that can do that type of stuff. We should probably keep him around. And that's where you see a lot of senior leaders, have that discussion.
What was Brian doing? What was he doing specifically?
Oh, he was just anything we needed on the cyber realm. Anything you could think of. It was
he'd hack anything and everything.
Anything and everything. Inventing new ways to communicate. Over the web that was a little more secure for us. That things that didn't even exist yet. And he was like, "Well, I'll create something." And you're like, and people say that, but who really does that? People who probably have engineering degrees and software engineering degrees and people who've been in schools, but we have a guy that just can naturally do it because he'll go home and read every cyber book there was and has been doing it since he was 5 years old. So those type of people are pretty rare to find within SF because of the majority of us are the same. We're your normal people, but every once in a while you come across a Brian or somebody who has this very niche skill set that is highly valuable.